Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm Mr. Hunterline. Thank you guys for tuning in. All right, guys, so let's get right into it, right? When you're in your 20s, if you're in your 20s right now and you don't have everything figured out, it's okay because you're not by yourself. When I was in my 20s, right? Obviously, I wasn't an entrepreneur, but I started to do some of the things that kind of shaped me into the person I am and the businessman that I am today. See, in your 20s, right, it's okay to not have things all figured out yet, right? I mean, you literally, graduated from high school at 18, maybe you went to college, or maybe you're set into like your first career job. So you're not really going to have everything figured out. So in your 20s, right? The 20s is a time period where you establish good habits, good discipline, you start to build experience, and most importantly, you develop a mindset that's going to help your future self. So this video targets those individuals between in their 20s, between 20 and 29. I'm going to share with you my experiences and what I did to help build my 42-year-old self. But this is a time where you want to learn discipline, habits, build experiences, and most importantly, develop a healthy mindset. All right. So I graduated in 2006 with my Bachelor's of Science degree. I also have a master's degree that I obtained 13 years after that. But in 2006, that's when I graduated with my Bachelor's of Science degree. I remember my first job coming out of college, I was a pretty good personal trainer in New York City. And then I remember 6 months after graduation ceremony and everything, Sally Mae, the infamous Sally Mae, sent me home a letter. And pretty much they told me exactly how much money that I owe them in student loan debt. And I'm never shy to say this number. I owed $125,000 in student debt. Now I feel sorry for a lot of you guys in today's age because my 125 in student loan debt is probably like a good 180, $200,000 for you guys. But at the end of the day, that's what I owe, and that's what I signed up for. I believe it had like an 18.9. I remember all of this. It had an 18.9 interest rate on it, which means they were going to get me. So after figuring out what the whole thing was with Sally Mae, my first order of business in my 20s was to get rid of my student debt. All right. I was able to knock that out in, I believe, like a year and a half. And throughout that process, man, I worked my job. I did really well with my job. I did a lot of overtime. And I lived, below my means. I dated. I didn't date so much because, dating could be a little bit expensive. That's a whole other story. But one of the first things I tackled in my early 20s career is to get rid of student debt, because every debt that you accumulate is going to affect your future income, right? So if you're busting your ass every week and you're making $1,000, $2,000 a week, or whatever you're getting per month, think about the percentage of what that student loan debt is taken away from you. So one thing I had to do early on was establish my debt, and that's what I did. And that process wasn't easy. You know, I was just thinking, man, I'm gonna work my butt off, and I got to give up $125,000. I mean, it was eating me up. But when I paid it off in about a year and a half, I think it was two, but let's just maybe a year and a half. When I paid it off in a year and a half, it was like everything for me just went up. My credit score went up. I had credit cards calling me to sign up with them. I qualified for certain loans, and definitely when I was taking home those checks, it was such a warm feeling knowing that all of my student loan debt was gone, and I was only like 22, 23. All right, guys, I'm sitting here and I'm waiting for my next pickup. But so the next thing I did in my 20s was that I actually lived below my means. Now, to some of you guys in this modern era, it's like it's a crime, right? To have a little extra money in your pocket, you know? And I had this mindset, right, where I wasn't trying to impress anybody in my 20s. What I was trying to do was build my financial system in my 30s. Now, I knew what was coming, right? I knew I might potentially meet my partner. I knew I might need a bigger apartment, a vehicle, all the essentials for being a 30-year-old. So I wasn't going to try to splurge and waste money a lot in my 20s. I had a relatively affordable apartment. I believe I bought my first vehicle in my 20s that I could afford on my budget. And I did little small stuff, man. I never bought a pair of shoes that was over $75. Um, and then I never bought a pair of jeans that was over $40. And I did that stuff consistent. I can give you a list, but it's just too much. But I just knew ahead of time that in order to live a credible, simple life, you actually need finances to do that. And I didn't want to go through a whole decade of my 20s struggling. With the credit card paid off, me doing well in work, everything to me at that point in time was a bonus and a plus. I do wish I would have invested some of that money I saved, but the past is the past. I can't think about it too much anymore. But at least as of right now, I'm doing it now. So to you guys in your 20s, man, you don't have to take a vacation 4 to 5 times a year. You can actually do a weekend trip, a road trip. You know, you can take some of that money that you're making now in whatever you do, invest it. Something as simple as 20 bucks a month, 40 bucks a month, $60, whatever you can afford at this time in your life, knowing everything that's going on with this economy. Save your money and invest your money. You got your 30s coming up, and you be amazed at what the discipline you do in your 20s can help you out so much in your 30s. All right, guys. So the next thing that I did, the next goal that I set was I chose jobs to do in my 20s, right? That could move me forward. All right. I'll repeat that again. I chose jobs in my 20s that could move me forward. And this is what I mean. And I'll use a direct example, right? Working in a health club, right? I started in a health club working as a high school intern. Yep. I was an intern where I did 50% personal training, and then I did 50% working at the front desk. And when you're a personal trainer or when you're working at the front desk, if you do well, the managers will, really kind of evaluate you when it's time for that evaluation period. And you have the opportunity to go from front desk to maybe manager on duty, and then from manager on duty to be a sales rep, and then sales rep you can be an assistant manager, then from an assistant manager you could be a general manager, and then from general manager you could be a regional, or so forth, so forth. I always chose jobs where I can start from the bottom or somewhere in that area, because I was a young 20-year-old, right? And I wanted to progress to the top. Now, over the course of those progressions, you learn so much, Think about it. When I left the health club, and I'm going to say it, Equinox Fitness Club, and shout out to Equinox Fitness Club on 85th Street. You guys are awesome. Anyway, when I left that club, right, I did a little bit of sales as well, right? So when I eventually left, I had sales experience, membership experience, not general manager, not managerial experience, but I was taking away a lot of those stuff that was helping me on my journey. And every step that I did, I never ever complained, because every step for me, I knew that it was one step that was needed to be on my journey. So I would say in your 20s, right? One goal to set is that when you choose these jobs, choose a job that's progressive, where the road to get to the top is like not an elevator, but it's like some steps, and you get better and better and better and better. All right. All right, guys, the next goal, don't worry about it. The next goal that I had in my 20s was that I wanted to build a professional reputation. So anybody that know me, I wanted to predicate everything on hard work, right? So no matter what job that I had, I was always gonna go and give it everything that I had. So if I signed up to be a mailman, if I signed up to be a personal trainer, a front desk person, a dog walker, whatever the case was, whatever job that I had that was needed, I wanted to build a professional reputation of being a hard worker. Someone who had a brain like a sponge, right? What? Yeah, I wanted to build someone or a foundation that had like a brain like a sponge, I showed up on time. Every time I was given a task or responsibility, I gave it my all. I asked questions, and I was a guy that didn't make a lot of excuses for anything, right? Here's a great example, and I always use Equinox Fitness Club. When I started my young career after college, right around age 22, right? When I started that right around age 22, I walked into a gym knowing how to work out a little bit, but when I got to the gym, man, I was around like a former wrestler, a former college track and field coach. I was around someone who studied martial arts. I mean, these guys at this gym were phenomenal. And what I wanted to do as a young professional, I wanted to steal and learn some of their little secrets so that I can kind of come up with how I wanted to be as a personal trainer. And I think that's something that's missing. I think that's something that's missing in today's generation. You finished, champ? All of it. Gracias, papá. Finito. Sí, gracias.
Yo.
All right, papá. So I think that's something that's missing. You know, I feel like when I'm seeing what's going on, a lot of people in this generation are taking jobs, leaving jobs early. They're not dressing up. They're not showing up to interviews prepared. Blah 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 blah. In this generation, build a professional reputation. Make people talk about you. Make people be excited to work with you. Make people choose you to inspire the next generation of trainees that's coming after you. And that's called building a professional reputation. And that was one of my main goals. One of my main goals in my 20s was to establish myself as a working professional. All right. So the last goal that I want to share with you guys who are in your 20s is to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. Now, I'm not saying have a goal to start your own company, right? I'm not saying that because everybody knows when you're working for yourself, it's not as easy as everybody think it is. So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is develop a mindset, right? Where you have self-control or control over the outcome of your finances, right? When I was in my 20s, I saw a lot of politics. I saw a lot of favoritism. I saw a lot of people controlling my vacations, my trips, customers. It was just a lot, right? And I would say, okay, you know, when I get an opportunity to do something, this is kind of how I want to do it. And I want to do it to a way where everybody can benefit, you know? And in your 20s, again, you don't have to have that part figured out, but you need to be able to pull in a lot of those skills and tricks that you learn from your supervisor, your managers, your co-workers. And that's how you're going to become more well-rounded, right? And that's what you should do in your 20s. All right, guys. So let's wrap this up. So if you're in your 20s and you were watching this, I want you to understand that it's okay to not have things figured out, right? At least at this point in time. When I built this business, Hunting Line Express, I didn't build it in my 20s, right? What I did in my 20s, I was kind of setting up the blueprint for building it where I am right now, right? Pay down your debt, okay? Develop a reputation, manage your money, develop certain skills that will make you more well-rounded, and start developing that mindset for what you guys want to do. Parents, if you guys are also watching this and you have that 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kid that's coming, I encourage you guys to watch this video. Follow my journey and how I am navigating you through my business and how I'm using some of the building blocks early in my life to building what I anticipate to be one of the best logistics companies. And thank you guys so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. All right, y'all. Till next time. Peace.